In the gospel today, Jesus tells the parable of the dishonest steward who is going to lose his job. So he prepares for that by making friends with all the people that owe his boss money. And when telling us this parable, Jesus is not saying that we should be dishonest like that steward. We should always be honest. But instead, he's telling us that just like the steward prepared ahead of time, since he knew he was going to lose his job, so we should do the same thing. We should prepare now for heaven. November started this past Sunday with All Saints' Day. And the saints give us the best example of how we should prepare now for heaven. So I think it would be good for us on this first Friday of November, as we celebrate the Sacred Heart, to learn more about the saint who helped spread this devotion of the Sacred Heart of Jesus, Saint Margaret Mary Aloke. Margaret Mary lived in the 17th century in France. And as a child, she was a happy little girl who loved, especially the nuns at her school that she went to. But when she was 10, she got very sick. And it was 5 years before she'd get well again. And to make things worse, her father died. And she had an aunt move into their home. And her aunt and uncle really made Margaret and her mother really suffer a lot. They weren't very nice to them. And almost every day, Margaret would go into the garden, and there she'd cry and she'd pray. What hurt her the most was seeing them treat her mother the way that they did. During this time, too, Margaret grew in a great love for Jesus in the Eucharist, and she also promised our Blessed Mother Mary that she would enter religious life and become a sister. Sometimes she would go and bring some of the poor children in her neighborhood, bring them into the garden, and teach them about Jesus. As she continued to grow, her mother and her other relatives wanted her to get married. But Margaret Mary wanted to keep her promise that she had made to Mary. And so when she was 23 years old, she became a visitation nun. And she was a kind and humble sister, even though some of the other sisters would get impatient with her sometimes because she couldn't always do the work as fast as the other sisters wanted her to do. But she was very dear to Jesus. And Jesus began to appear to Sister Margaret Mary in her prayers. And he told Margaret Mary that he wanted to show the whole world of how much he loves us all. Because during this time, there were some really wrong ideas that were going around in the world. And one of the ideas was called Jansenism. And people began thinking that Jesus only died to save some people. He didn't die to save everybody. Of course, we know that that's pretty wrong, isn't it? He died for everyone. He loves all of us. And so Jesus told Sister Margaret Mary to spread this new devotion to his Sacred Heart to be this sign of his great love for every single person. And there was one time when he appeared to her, this is what he said. She wrote down the words that he spoke to her. Jesus said to her, "Look at this heart, which has loved men so much, and yet men do not want to love me in return. Through you, my divine heart wishes to spread its love everywhere on earth." So Jesus wanted to use Margaret Mary to spread this devotion to the Sacred Heart. But it wasn't easy for her to do it, because many people, even the sisters that she lived with, didn't believe that Jesus had actually come and spoke to her. And there were some that got mad at her for trying to spread this new devotion. So that brought her great pain, because she wanted to do what Jesus asked her to do, but they wouldn't let her. Finally, there was a holy priest that came to be the priest for the sisters, and he believed Margaret Mary and he helped her to be able to begin to spread this devotion to the Sacred Heart. And Jesus blessed her for all of that hard work and the pain that she had to go through to do it. And so today, this devotion to the Sacred Heart is practiced all over the place, all over the world. And this year, we're learning more about it. The devotion of going to Mass and receiving communion on 9 First Fridays in a row. That's part of what Jesus revealed to St. Margaret Mary. Also praying a holy hour in front of Jesus in the Blessed Sacrament. Also having that image of Jesus' Sacred Heart, a reminder of his love. There's actually 12 promises that Jesus gave to Margaret Mary for anybody who honors his Sacred Heart. So we'll learn some of those other promises another time. St. Margaret Mary is a great example for us of how we too can prepare right now here on earth. We can prepare to be with all the saints, to be with Jesus in heaven forever.